Well, here we are wrapped up for another day and sitting inside just kind of goofing off, got a fire going. It's supposed to get pretty cold tonight. But at any rate, I need to clarify a couple things, at the beginning of this section of the video. To clarify a point, at different points, in the video, I'm talking about the tractor this or the tractor that. I have already gone through the motions of getting the old tractor running, so that's going to be the last segment of the video. I've already gone through it. I just haven't shown you guys that yet, and so I just thought I'd clarify that because it really is difficult making this thing, making these things sequential. Is not the simplest thing in the world to do, but at any rate, I apologize for rambling on at the different times whenever I ramble. So many pertinent points of interest that I think need to be brought out whenever you're fabricating something. And again, I am not a professional fabricator. I ain't a professional welder. I ain't none of that stuff. I'm just a retired old guy that enjoys doing this. And if any of you guys glean anything interesting or helpful out of it, so be it. I'm just tickled to death. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching me. Now, I know y'all probably get tired of hearing that statement that I'm a sucker for a bargain, but if y'all have any flat belt driven equipment, you'll know that if you find a bargain in flat belts at an auction or whatever, farm sale, whatever, you need to jump on it. What you're looking at here is a whole variety of different, 6 and 7 and possibly even 8-inch or 9-inch flat belts of various lengths. That I picked up just about 2 years ago. Of course, I've got others, up overhead in the other shed, but I got this whole pile of belts right here and several others I've already used out of it for $2.50 at an auction literally 3 miles from my house. If you go to buy a piece of belting just like this right here, you'll understand. Now that piece of belt there, it's stretched out about 40 foot. So that's a good 80, 82 foot of belting. You're talking mega bucks right there. But at any rate, we're going to go ahead and piece together a flat belt for this little saw rig. Okay, I showed you one stack of flat belt, up overhead in that other shed. But in my old shed, my old workshop, I've got a whole selection of different belting. The stuff up there is all old style stuff. It's got a different gripping coefficient, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I've got a whole pile of all this conventional new style belting, various widths, various lengths, just scrap and stuff. We're down to where we're figuring out what length the belt, or figure out how pretty closely to what length the belt we're going to need. Now, years ago, let me clarify this a little bit. All right, years ago, I did commercial and industrial HVAC, primarily, and a lot of times you'd get out there, in some badly abused equipment, stuff that's not been properly taken care of, and belts are completely gone. They might have just totally disintegrated. You look around for pieces, you can almost always find some notation that you can get you can get the belt information off of. But we had to figure out how to do that, and so I'm going to show you what I did, literally dozens and dozens of times out of necessity. Think about this. If you use a little bit of logic, you can see that all you really have to do to figure out what the close to the length of belt you're going to need is you need to know how far halfway around this pulley is and how far halfway around that pulley is, and then the distance from here to there 2 times. All right. So what you do, you go back to your high school geometry days. Circumference equals pi times diameter there. But anyway, if C equals pi times diameter, that's 3.14 times whatever this guy is here. So if this is an 8-inch, we want to multiply the 3.14 times the 8, divide it by 1/2. If you divide it by 1/2, you know now what it is from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. All right. If you don't divide it by half, you go all the way around it. So you want to divide it by half. So we do that on this one, and we do the same thing on that one. And that's going to give us the half circumference of the 2 pulleys, the drive pulley down there and the driven pulley up here. Then you take the center line from this axle or this shaft, center line to that shaft. That's going to be the straight distance from halfway around. Multiply that distance times 2, and you will get basically the length of belt that you need. Now there's going to be enough adjustment in this particular case, the upper link up here, by telescoping this out, that's going to extend the top of this, raise this, push this backwards, which is going to act as your belt tightener. And so if we get within 2 inches or so, we should be fine and dandy. So I'm going to calculate that out. Okay, bear with me here. I probably shouldn't do this. But at any rate, if circumference equals pi times diameter, that's 3.14 times 8 on the small pulley. That equals 25.2. You want 1/2 of that circumference, so 25.12 divided by 2 is 12.56. That's halfway around the small pulley. Then you go to the bigger pulley. 3.14 times 9 is 28.26. Divide that by 2, that's 14.13. That's halfway around the big pulley. Add the 12.56 and the 14.13, that's 26.69 inches halfway around the 2 pulleys. Center to center on the 2 shafts is 34.5 inches, so take that times 2, because you got the top half and the bottom half. 34.5 times 2 is 69. That's your center to center dimension times 2. And you take your 26.7 inches plus your 69 inch, add it together, you get 95.7 inches. So that's going to be pretty close to 95 3/4 inch. Now you're going to gain just a little bit whenever you see the belt lacings go together. You're going to see that you gain just a little bit because the belts don't actually butt completely together. They go down inside those hog ring clips, so to speak, but they don't bottom completely out. So you gain about maybe 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch on those clips. So we're going to cut us a piece of belt just about that length, and we're going to give her the old school try and see what happens. Come along with me for the ride, man. It'll be fun. Now I got my length laid out as we calculated over there. And then what I'm going to do, or what I usually do, is I'm just going to estimate approximately half the length I think we're going to gain with the clips and subtract that off. So hopefully we'll come out nominally fairly close to where we want to go. So you want to cut this nice and squarely. This happens to be just a scrap piece of belt that has the clips on one end, but they're not any good. So we're going to put new ones on both ends. So now that I've got it held nice and securely, we'll make some repeated slices with a sharp razor knife. It moved on me a little bit, but that's okay. I stayed in the groove. There we go. Nice clean cut. Now next thing you want to do, you can do whatever you want to do, but I like to bevel these just a little bit. Instead of having a square edge on the joint, like to bevel them puppies just a little bit. They ain't no, well, there might be a specific angle, but I don't have one. I just kind of eyeball it and whack a little bit of it off there and hope for the best. Okay, now we know this is a square with this right here, so when we put our belt lacing on there, it should be, the belt should track fairly square. So let's go to the other end. It's already cut and it's already got a little bit of a relief angle on it. So now we're on to the actual belt lacing tool. Now I don't know how much y'all know about belt lacing, but at any rate, this is a conventional tool for, I think it's called a belt lacing anvil. This one's actually made for use in a vise. You chuck that up in your vise, and as you put your lacing down inside here and insert the belt into it, then you turn the crank and it just cranks it all the way down like that and secures those hog rings right into the belt. But they make these in all different shapes and sizes. This here, like old farm equipment, the footage per minute on those flat belts really isn't that great. It's really kind of slow RPM, whatever. The more faster paced industrial machines require a little bit of a quieter, I guess, operation or whatever. Maybe more horsepower, maybe they need to be a little more secure. But you can have these that has 2 and 3 times the amount of teeth per inch, so to speak. But when we put this stuff in here, there's this little other part of the tool. To hold those in, we'll slide this in. That holds the alligator, or that holds the hog ring right into this so it doesn't fall out. Now, I keep saying hog rings. I don't know if y'all know anything about hog rings,
But hog rings was, they were something. We had the hog ring tool. You have to hold the hogs down when they're rooting and tearing out your fence rows and all that stuff. And we'd actually have to clamp that by hand right into their snout. Then they'd go digging and everything into the ground, and it'd rip their snout out. Well, it hurt a little bit, you know. It hurt me, you know. It used to hurt me squeezing them things in there, you know. But at any rate, it ripped their noses out and everything, and it kind of deters them from rooting and tearing up your fence rows. Farming was crude, man, back in the day. But anyway, I don't know if you can look down inside here and see, but this is really, really very similar to what those hog rings look like. They were much, much larger though. But this is a typical example right here. They come in a box like this right here. Much, much wider. I think they're, I don't know how many inches that is across there. It's a good 14-inch, I guess, or whatever. So you can put some pretty hefty belts together, providing you've got the lacing tool to get it done. So at any rate, we're going to go ahead and load this thing up in the tool. This is a tool that's, I guess it's the flagship of the belt lacing tools, I would think. This is a Clipper belt lacing tool manufacturer. It's got a patent date of 1909. And then it's got other patent dates of 1913. I'm sure that's improvements and all that. But at any rate, this thing is probably 100 years old. If you can see this ratcheting, as you pull forward, it allows it to, it will not allow it to go backwards until you lift this part and allow it to flow back. And I got some scrap hog rings inside there for you to take a look at. And you can see whenever you index this to the right, you can see the anvil actually come down to smash it. And you can see the pin that's in here. So this is the only thing missing on this are the two handles, but that's okay. Any kind of a 1/2-inch reasonably hard bar stock will work just fine to operate the machine. So you can see how that's going to work right there. But you pull it down to where it comes in contact, the ratchet holds it to starting point, and then you latch these guys down, holding everything perfectly square. And that's what all these sharp spikes are on there for. Those sharp spikes are to aid you in holding that belt nice and square. Because if it slips a little bit, you get a little bit off kilter, your belt is gonna just go back and forth like a snake with his back broke, and it probably gonna come off of your pulley. Now once you get those in here, and you got your retaining pin in here, that way they won't go anywhere. You want to slice this down with your knife. I've already sliced that, but you just slice it right down through the middle. Leave that intact, or I do anyway. Leave it intact, and just kind of snug the vise up to where it's ready to. And you squarely insert this all the way down inside there, perfectly square, all the way to where it bottoms out. I actually did this backwards. I should have put this over the back side because I've got to turn the handle on the vise. I wasn't thinking there. We're going to insert this in squarely. We can feel it bottom out. I can feel that I'm square with the cut. So now that that's square, I'm holding it in there nice and securely. I'm just going to crank this vise in. Those hog rings are penetrating that belting. You pull her all the way up snug. A little bit not quite right, but you know what? As far as a farmer repair is concerned, this is going to be adequate. All we have to do is mesh those up, put our pin in it, and see if it's going to work. One thing that I feel the need to clarify, whenever we were talking about the belt lacing tool, I was telling you that once you get your lacing material into your lacing tool, that you can leave that paper, that cardboard, on those once you get that inserted in your tool, and then slice it down with the pocket knife. You can definitely do that. It's not really recommended to do it that way. You're supposed to, technically, you're supposed to put that in the tool, and you feed that down and pull that off, remove it. Sometimes though, you'll find if you pull those off, These little guys go to flopping back and forth, and they just don't stay in position. It's kind of difficult to hold the ball if you're working by yourself to get it squarely into the belt, which is why many times I opt to leave that cardboard on there by slicing it and sticking my belting into it, and then just let it wear off. You know, after a few hours of operation or whatever, or you can actually pick it off with you know, a pick or a pair of needle nose. But this is just personal preference. But I really think the manufacturer, and I've never checked on it, but I think they recommend removing that once you get it in your vise. But at any rate, I thought I'd clarify that because, like I tell you guys, you know, I don't do everything right. A lot of stuff I probably don't do right, but whatever I do, I do because it works. It works or has worked in the past for me. Well, this is the moment of truth. I have not fed this through here yet. All I've done was measure out that 97.5 inches, whatever it was, and cut it off, put the ends on it, and we're going to see how close our calculations come to being right. I think the history's going to repeat itself. It should be just about fine. Now, this is not the easiest thing to do by yourself, trust me on that. Okay, it looks like it's going to work. This actually is not what you're supposed to use. This is a plastic coated copper wire. Happened to find a whole pile of those at one time, and I thought they'd work fine, but they are very difficult to get in. I'm going to see if I can find an actual piece of old cat gut that came shipped with some of the old pieces. Well, unfortunately, I did not find any cat gut, but what I did find was a little WD-40. So there you have it. That is going to work just fine. I'll cut this off right here, and we'll see if the old tractor starts. And if the tractor starts, we'll see if it'll go round and round. And we will take this out of here by adjusting the top link and make sure it tracks. We've got a crown pulley here. We got a crown in the pulley there. That crown has a tendency to make the flat belt run dead center. If it does track just a little bit off, all you do, because there's no stabilizing bars on the back end of the track, all you do to track it back in line is gently pick up the back end, shift this way, shift that way, until this tracks right down the center of both pulleys. That's what I've had to do in the past when I used this same tractor on that other one that I showed you down in the woods with the fiber pulley that's ate up. But this should work fine. I'm going to cut that off and see if that old tractor will fire up. Well, it's a little embarrassing. I went to start the tractor and the doggone thing wouldn't start. I said, what the heck? I just got it running a day or two ago, you know. And come to find out, hey, they got to have gas in the tank for them to run. I'd forgotten the other day whenever I fired it up, the tank was bone dry. I put 2 gallons in it. That's all I had. So I had to shut down the operation and run over to the local gas station about 5 miles away. So let's see if we have any better luck. All things considered, I guess that ain't too awful bad for first time letting the clutch out on it. I think everything's going to work just fine. I'm going to run over to the wood pile and saw up a block of wood or two, and then I'll go ahead and bring her back in, and we'll touch up these teeth, get a little bit of a sharpening on them, and put a set in them. I'll show you guys how to do that. It ain't pretty, but it's functional. Well, you saw when I fired it up in there in the shed, just kind of ramped the RPMs up on the saw. It started bucking and snorting a little bit. I did not do anything to that carburetor. Remember, I just did the sediment bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that carburetor off. I think it needs a good thorough cleaning. How you like that custom 1.5 inch copper intake? My brother did that 30-some years ago, out of necessity. Like I said, this tractor was vandalized at a buddy of mine's property way out in the country, and radiator was stolen. The sheet metal was all beat off of it. I think I told you guys that earlier in the video a couple, 3-4 days ago or so when I first got this thing running. But they had stolen a lifting arm off of the back. They just literally took an axe and just beat the sheet metal completely off of it and smashed the steering wheel. The steering wheel was busted all the way down around the cowl. The gauges were all busted out of it, and it was left for dead right out in the middle of the woods. A buddy of mine gave it to me, and my brother, who's older than I am by about 12 years, he's always seemed to always find more time in a day than I've got, so he rebuilt the engine for me, because it had laid open and got water in it. It was locked up, so it's totally new rebuild. Carburetor's never been touched from the time from the time I brought it home from his house. It's never been touched. It's loped like that quite a lot, but it's time to give it a little tender love and care. Those linkages are kind of froze on there, so it's going to take me a little WD-40. Ooh, that one came off. Okay. Sure is a sweet looking sediment bowl though, ain't it? But the inside of that carburetor is going to be nasty. I'm sure the jet's probably going to, well, I'm going to put it in an ultrasonic parts washer, and it's going to shine like a newborn baby's butt when I get done with it.